What's going on, my planting people? Today I'm going to be doing my best to save this maltreated, infected, infested Jade Arborescens plant right here. Look at it. It looks good from afar, but up close there is so much going wrong with this plant. And I'm going to try my best to save this, what is a wish list plant for me. I've always wanted a really big one of these plants, and finally I've got my hands on one, but I've got my hands full because there is a lot of work to do to get this plant to a stage where it's happy, healthy and thriving. So I'm going to try to do that today. This is the latest plant in my collection. I wasn't planning on getting this plant at all, but me and my mum went to visit one of her friends and she had this plant, and I said, you know what, I've always wanted to get my hands on one of these plants, a big specimen, and something like this would be great. Can I have a cutting? And in fact, she's a bit of an older lady. She said, I'm trying to get rid of my plants actually, and I'm not trying to replace them. So if you want, you can have the whole thing because it's not doing great. So I said, I'm up for the challenge. Let's go for it. Let me see what I can do. Bringing you in for a closer look, you'll see that there are many leaves that are just falling off of the plant. In fact, there's several down here. I've just tried to chuck them in here in case they grow. I doubt it. But also, this plant is infected with mealybugs. I did see a couple. Oh, look, here's one. Here's a mealybug right there. So that needs treating. But so many of the leaves are just literally falling off the plant for no reason, apparently. The trunk is certainly still firm and it looks really good. But the rest of the plant, look, I think there's another mealybug right there in between that leaf and the stem. And there's a lot of kind of rust on here also. So there's a lot of work to be done. I'm going to keep this plant very, very far away from all of my other plants, but I think that if I can get this plant to revive and bounce back, it's going to be a jewel in the crown. It's going to be a really impressive plant and something I can turn into a bonsai, because that was the whole reason why I wanted to get one of these plants, was to turn it into that. And I was looking online and some of these plants are going for a pretty penny. I mean, talking multiple hundreds, up to like 600-700. I've seen some go for, but these are really, really big ones. But this is a sizable one. I'm going to try my best. You would have seen that there are some other plants in the pot. This is the Queen of the Night, I believe she said it was. So she gave me a cutting of that. I will pot this up. And there is another kind of Christmas cactus, Thanksgiving cactus in here as well. So she gave me a cutting of that. So there is a lot of work to do. It is quite late, so I'm going to take my time. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get all of it done in one day, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to treat this plant for all the bugs that it's got. I'm also going to change out the soil as well, because I don't know how long it's been sat in here, and that's probably why the plant isn't looking that great. We're also in winter, so typically you don't really want to do this with a succulent, especially in the winter, because you can't really water them too much. You have to be really careful. But we are where we are. I have to do what I can to get this plant to be happy. So I will be doing a repot, quite a substantial one. I'm going to be removing leaves as well, whatever falls off. I'm not going to be picking leaves off, but a lot of them are just, if you shake the plant, a leaf will fall. So I need to make sure that I sort of I'm ready for that, and I can deal with that when it comes. But first things first is I'm going to make up some soil, some really good soil. So one of the things I did today, I wanted to get some fresh soil. I've put in some sand in that soil. I've also mixed in some semi-hydro mix for that aeration as well. Mixed it up really, really good. And then I stuck it in the microwave because, again, this is a garden center soil, very, basic soil. It's not a specialist soil at all. I've done my own amendments to get it to where I want it to be. But again, going for that really airy soil, put it in the microwave to kill any nasties. And what we're going to do is we're going to have to first unpot this bad boy and try my best, my very best, to get rid of as much of the soil as possible. Now, as I said, it's getting late, so I don't know that this is going to be a quick job. I do find that these plants tend to have quite a dense root system, but we'll see what's going on once we get under the surface. So to do this repot, my main tool is going to be this. This is a chopstick, and that's going to help me to get in between the roots and get rid of everything. Just look at all of these leaves that have fallen off of this plant. It's so sad to see, because this, I imagine, would have been a great looking plant when it was in its heyday. You can see some bigger chunks have fallen off. I'm not going to bother trying to grow any of these cuttings actually, because the plant is in such a state that I don't imagine anything that I try will work. It will be very successful because the leaves are very, very limp. I'll just show you. So this is one that's just fallen off. It's like super soft. Look, it just broke in my hand. So there's definitely something going on. So the first thing I'm doing is I'm taking my chopstick and I'm just sort of scoring along the edge of the pot, between the pot and the soil, and that's going to help to detach any of the roots that may be stuck to the surface there. Oh, didn't even have to do too much because the whole thing has come up. Let me show you the soil. It doesn't look terrible, but equally it doesn't look great. Whoops. I want to be careful that none of this old soil goes into my new and sterilized soil, which I have just below here in this bucket. So I'll move that to the side, out of the way. And next step is to just remove as much of that soil as possible. I'm going to start from the top and just ease away all of that soil. There is quite the issue I can see of root mealybugs as well, so that's going to need to be addressed. I unfortunately don't have root mealybug solution. I do have the solution to tackle mealybugs on the leaves, but nothing in the soil. You can see there's a white patch just here where my finger is. That is root mealybug eggs. It's quite wet as well with this soil. Not sure when it was last watered, but I got this plant maybe about a week ago. It's just been sat in my kitchen away from everything else on the floor. It hasn't been watered. I am going to be quite aggressive with my approach to this. I'm sure you guys don't want to sit here and watch me scrape away at soil for 20 minutes. So I'll be back once I've done with this bit. So after about 10 minutes or so, I've been able to get the plant to this point. I've removed most of the soil, but there's still some stubborn bits right in the middle part. This is where it's the most dense. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this plant outside. I've got an outside tap. I'm going to blast it with some water and see how we get on. Hopefully that doesn't cause too much damage. Next thing to do is to treat my plant. So as I said, I do believe that this plant has rust, maybe even some mildew, and this Protect Green, what is this called? Provanto, which I've used for quite a while, seems to, well, it says that it addresses this. I'm going to attempt to use this. The container says that for ornamental plants, it's 4 mils per litre of water. I'm not going to need more than a litre, so I'll use that. And then I'll also attempt to use this SB plant invigorator and bug killer. This is kind of like a soap, and it helps to kill the plants, the bugs that way. So I'm also going to try to mix this in. I'm not sure if you're supposed to mix these two because one's a fungicide and one is a kind of a control thing, but we'll see what happens. And the mix for this one is 10 milliliters per litre of water. So we'll get that mixed up into my spray bottle over here. We'll see how we get on. So I've got everything mixed up in here. Got the plant in the bathtub so I can really have a go at it. And it's now time just to spritz it. I really want to get all of the leaves completely saturated in this mixture. I'm going to try to avoid the roots, but if I do get some on the roots, that's absolutely fine. I will give the roots one last rinse before I pot this plant up. As for the leaves, I will leave the residue, the water on here, but I will, as I say, rinse off the roots. Look at it, it's getting really late now, but we're near the end. So the plant has been washed and desoiled and everything. I'm really happy with sort of where it got to. I think in terms of getting rid of the mealybugs, this is going to be a long-term thing. If I aim to sort of treat this plant at least once a month, eventually I think the problem will be sorted. For me, the hardest part, or the thing to think about the most right now, is the soil or the roots. Because I've removed so many of the roots, I want to be really careful that I'm not putting the plant in an environment that could really promote root rot. It hasn't got as many roots as it did before to take up the water, so there's a risk that the plant could be sat in a lot of water and cause even more damage than what it was going through already. One of the things I'm going to do is actually reduce the size of the pot. My original plan was to keep the original terracotta pot, because terracotta is the best for succulents. It allows it to dry out really quickly because it is a porous material, so it can lose moisture a lot easier. So because I don't have any other terracotta pots at my disposal, I'm going to use a smaller one. Hopefully this is about the right size for the root system that this plant has. Plus I've got a really airy mix as well, so I hope the combination allows me to keep this plant happy. So as I said, I've got my soil made up and sanitized already. We'll just add in a little layer of soil like so. Unfortunately, when I was in the shower, I picked up the plant in a slightly awkward position and one of the shoots broke off. I could either pot this separately or put it in the same pot. I've decided to put it in the same pot. Also, you see that the roots are completely drenched as well. If I had more time, I would actually let this plant sit out and dry out, air dry, overnight, or at least for a couple of hours. But in the interest of time, we're just gonna put it in, and we're gonna hope for the best, essentially. So yeah, gonna put this here. I'm also gonna put this one in. Try to position it in a decent position, so that if I do end up using this as a bonsai, that everything can kind of come together nicely. And we just backfill like so. And using the same tool that got me here, the chopstick, I'm going to use it to sort of compact the soil around the roots so there are no air pockets. Really, really important to do, because otherwise what happens is there's a void in between the roots, and when you water, the water sort of settles there, doesn't drain through properly, and that can also cause some serious root rot. Just gonna push the soil down as well. I think that will do for now. I want to be careful because this plant is so top heavy. I don't want it to sort of tip over. So I'll be careful with this and not move it around too much, if you can see me. This is the Crassula Arborescens. As I said, a wish list plant, the one that I'm going to try my very best to save. And I hope the next time that I show you this plant on this channel, that it looks fantastic. So stay tuned for that update. And it'll be interesting to see how we get on, especially over winter as well. If we were in the summer, what I would do as well is cut off all of the leaves, every single leaf. I would just chop it back into just a stump, give the plant as much light as possible, and just let it regrow everything. But we don't have that. But what I will do instead is actually give this plant a lot of just give it its own grow light, because it's going through a lot of trauma right now, and I just need it to kind of feel that summer is still here and give it a real fighting chance. So this is it. This will be the setup of this plant for the next couple of weeks. My plan is to have it sat right in front of these grow lights. I'm going to have them on for about 6 to 8 hours a day, or 6 to 12. This one goes up 3, 6 and 12 hours intervals. So I might do between 6 and 12, maybe 12 to start off with, and then work my way down a little bit before I can move it in front of a window. But for now, this will be it. As you can see, it's in a much smaller pot than what it was in before, and it's got dedicated lights. So who knows, depending on how this goes and if I can see some growth, I may actually just go in and trim off all of the leaves, and then just blast this thing with as much light as possible, just to sort of completely restart the plant. But because it's been through so much in such a short space of time, I've decided just to leave it as this for now. I'm not going to water this plant, not for a month probably. I'm just going to leave it, let it completely dry out and do its thing. But that is it. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, keep planting.